Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for a cafecito and conversation in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, as well as looking forward to the Miami Book Fair, one of our signature events that is known worldwide for all the best in literature and artists, authors around the world. We are blessed and grateful for a wonderful presentation today from a Florida author, Craig Pittman. We will also get an update on the book fair from Lisa Pally. And first, to kick us off, we were going to have Herlinda Lombardi from the Multicultural Tourism Development Team talk a little bit about Hispanic Heritage Month. But before I pass it off to her, I do want to just remind everyone that the chat is a great resource to use for networking and sharing information throughout the event. So feel free to use the chat to share your contact info, share any updates and things that are coming up or ways that you'd like to connect with our other partners. If you do have any questions for our presenters, that's also a great place to put them. We will be having an opportunity for Q&A at the end. We also will have some trivia at the end, so I encourage everyone to stay tuned in. We will have a trivia question from Herlinda's presentation, as well as a trivia question from Craig about his presentation about his book, which is all sorts of crazy things he's written about that have happened in Florida. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to my friend and colleague, Herlinda. So please, Herlinda, take it away. And thanks again for taking the time to share some updates this.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ali. And thank you all for joining us today. As Ali mentioned, I'm part of the Multicultural Tourism and Development Team. We work with multicultural neighborhoods to help promote their events and local businesses. We also work very closely with all of the departments at the GMCVB to make sure that there's a heritage footprint in everything that we do at the Bureau. In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, there have been a multitude of events since the start of Hispanic Heritage Month, which is mid-September. And although it officially ends this week, there's still plenty of events running in Miami through the end of the month. So I'm going to be highlighting a few of those in different neighborhoods throughout Miami and Miami Beach, so that no matter where you are, there's always something within reach. So I'm going to share my screen now so that you don't have to look at me the whole time. Here we go. Starting tonight, the Miami Beach Music Festival in partnership, can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, good. The Miami Beach Music Festival in partnership with the City of Miami Beach's On Stage series presents Zarzuela, From Zarzuela to Bolero. This music festival brings Spanish culture to life in the voices of Miami opera singers, featuring well-known melodies that have been made famous. Also in Miami Beach, this one's happening tomorrow night at North Shore Park, this Hispanic Heritage Festival. There'll be performances by children who are participating in the after schools park and recreation programs with concessions, strolling performances, arts, crafts, and much more. This one sounds like a nice family event to celebrate our culture. Then we move on to Little Havana. This Friday, Calle Ocho News is celebrating its second annual Hispanic Heritage Festival. And the theme this year is called Celebrating Milestones, with the purpose of celebrating community milestones made possible by local artists and business owners. Here you'll be able to socialize, dance, and be in fellowship with community members. The GMCVB is a sponsor of this event, and I'll be attending, so hopefully I'll see some of you there as well. Should be a fun time. Next is Celebrate Orgullo, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. This one's back for its 11th year, and Celebrate Orgullo is a 2-week festival that celebrates Greater Miami and Miami Beach's Hispanic and Indigenous LGBTQ community with memorable events. It's been running since October 1st. Here's a calendar. You can see everything they've had going on, which is quite a bit. And they're going to be wrapping it up this Friday at Desertland Park with a concert and a drive-in movie screening The Birdcage, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen that, I love it. So they've had a good success this year as well. Then going up a little north to Opa-locka, The city of Opa-locka is hosting a Conga Loca Hispanic Street Festival and will be uniting their community through the power of Latin music with many popular performances. And our very own local Hispanic MC will be Roxanne Vargas from NBC6 News. If you're looking for something virtual to do, the Adrian Arch Center is kicking off their heritage project, with the Afro-Latin music experience. The discussion will explore the evolution of Afro-Latinx music from the 1990s through today, and will be spotlighting salsa, reggaeton, and hip hop. This is parte dos, part two. They did have part one of the discussion, which took place, I believe, earlier in the year, or maybe even last year. So this conversation next week will continue on, but if you're interested in listening to part one, it's there on their link. Let me see. Oh, okay. Can you still see my screen? Okay, I thought I stopped. Viernes Culturales, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. Typically it's held the third Friday of every month, but this, I just found out yesterday, it's been rescheduled to October 22nd. And it's actually going to start a little earlier. So just 1 week later. Viernes Culturales is Little Havana's art and culture festival, where you can enjoy live music, discover local artists, dance, shop, and have a delicious dinner at one of the many restaurant options in Little Havana. Next is the town of Miami Lakes. They are transporting themselves to Nicaragua to enjoy Nicaragua's beautiful and vibrant culture. There'll also be art exhibits, music, and of course, more delicious Hispanic food. And this is also a celebration not to be missed. It's free, but registration is required.
Where?
Sorry?
Where?
On Eventbrite. And all of these events are listed on our website as well. I'm just taking you to the direct link, but I'm going to share the link in the chat. Next is La Gran Fiesta. This one's hosted by the city of North Miami. This is their signature event. It's called La Gran Fiesta, Una Noche Tropical, which features an array of Latin dancing, food, and live music. And for the fourth year in a row, it will be emceed by local iHeart radio personality host Enrique Santos. And here you can see some images from previous events. This looks very festive. Let me see. This, I believe, was 2 years ago. So it looks great. I haven't attended, but it looks very festive. And lastly, I wanted to mention Miami-Dade College, because they have a program, a month-long list of programming for Hispanic heritage. And the theme this year is Esperanza, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope. As you can see, they have just a ton of programming, from the Spanish Film Festival to art exhibits, culinary demonstrations, poetry readings, and interviews with Hispanic authors, and much, much more. As you could see, there's literally something for everybody. They're going to be wrapping it up on the, I believe, 27th, down here. Where is it? Right here, they're wrapping up the month, October 27th, with a closing fiesta. And as you can see, they have these events at every campus, so you can access them wherever you are, wherever you live or work, again, there's something for everybody. And as I mentioned, all of these events can be found on our GMCVB website. Just type in Hispanic Heritage and they will magically appear. I'll also share the direct link in the chat for you all. And I'm going to stop sharing now. Stop share. Okay. And the reality is, living in Miami, we live Hispanic heritage 365 days a year. So, whether it's now or later, please just make sure to get out there and enjoy one of these many events that we offer in our multicultural neighborhoods. And lastly, our department distributes a multicultural newsletter. So if you're not already subscribing to that, I'm gonna drop our email in the chat so we can get you on that distribution list. Thank you again. Gracias.
Thank you, Herlinda. I'm sorry if I took the screen away from you by unmuting for a minute, but thank you for that awesome update, much more comprehensive and a lot more events than I was expecting to have access to. It really is incredible that last year, I mean, we weren't doing anything along these lines. It was 100% virtual, and wow, it's just really a world of difference. And in many cases, you have the option of virtual or in person. So I think that even though COVID has been a challenge for us all, there's some good things, bright spots, such as more flexibility and being able to attend more stuff, such as an event like this. So thank you so much for that great update. I have a couple questions that have come in for you that I will address at the end, Herlinda, but without further ado, I definitely want to talk about one of our destination's best festivals and community events that not only is for locals, but people all around the world. And no better person to share updates on that than a good friend, colleague, and PR extraordinaire, Miss Lisa Pally. So Lisa, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a wonderful segue from Herlinda because of Miami Book Fair and Miami-Dade College. So yes, I just want to let you all know that Miami Book Fair is happening. It's happening in person and online, talking about Allie's issue of flexibility. Miami Book Fair is that as well. So if you do come to the in-person fair, it will also be live streamed. So you can do it either way, in person and live stream on your computer. So I want you all to mark the dates. It's November 14th through the 21st at Miami-Dade College, Wilson Campus, downtown Miami. And the fair is going to be, we've taken just a lot of thought into presenting a variety of authors for all ages. So there's a wide variety of authors participating. And the calendar, the schedule will be up tomorrow. So I invite you all to visit miamibookfair.com and take a look at some of the authors. We have some really amazing people participating. Some of them you'll recognize their names. There's Lee Child and Anita Hill, Anthony Horowitz, Stevie Van Zandt, Eric Larson, local people like Richard Blanco, Tim Dorsey, Jim Capando, Les Standiford. It's just going to be really, really fun. And there's special programs for kids, there's special programs in Spanish, and we have a Caribbean component as well. And we are all about keeping people safe. So there will be precautions put into place, limited number of seats, and each room will be cleaned. All events will be RSVP and will require a ticket. So I invite you all to visit miamibookfair.com. And I'm here today to introduce a good friend and colleague, Craig Pittman, one of our Florida authors. And I'll just do a brief little intro about Craig. He comes from a long line of Florida storytellers. He's here today to share a little bit of why we Floridians are the way we are. We might be a little funky down here in the southern part of the United States. I like to think of us as unique. It's got to be the sun and the water. Craig is an inveterate newsman, investigative journalist, and columnist for the Tampa Bay Times, and has been writing about Florida for the past 30 years. He'll be at Miami Book Fair this year and is here with us today now to give us a little taste as to what is between the covers of his new book, The State You're In, Florida Men, Florida Women, and Other Wildlife. The book features a series of columns and stories about living in Florida and about those of us who call Florida home. I'm hoping he can share some of the quintessential only in Florida kind of stories he shares in The State You're In, like when he accompanied fearless females on a python trip into the Everglades, or the one about the scientist who really did find a creature that had been part of Florida's folklore for a long time and that it does exist and was kept alive in a Tupperware container. Let Craig tell you about his exchange he had with Tupperware. Craig, take it away.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today. In 2016, I came over to the book fair and wrote and talked about my book, Oh, Florida. And I had a lot of fun going around talking about Oh, Florida, because Oh, Florida, how America's weirdest state influenced the rest of the country. Because afterwards, everybody would come up and they would do two things. One, they would tell me their Florida stories, which included one story I can tell you is people who found out that their next door neighbor was running an illegal nudist bed and breakfast. And the way they found out is they gave their kids a trampoline for Christmas. And then the second thing they would do after telling me their own Florida story is they would say, well, you need to write a sequel. You need to write a second book, a second Oh Florida 2, Electric Boogaloo. And I kept saying, well, I don't really have anything else to say. I don't have anything else to say in a sequel. But I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe there's a way to do a sequel without doing a sequel. And so I wound up writing The State You're In, Florida Men, Florida Women, and Other Wildlife, which is not a direct sequel to Oh Florida, but it sort of has that same spirit of celebrating all the glorious weirdness that is Florida. It's a collection of stories and columns I've written over the last 30 years, some for the Tampa Bay Times, some for other publications. And there's one for the one I write for now, which is the Florida Phoenix. I'm a weekly columnist for the Florida Phoenix. There are 4 sections. The first section is Florida Men and Florida Women. And in that, it tells stories about profiles of people like alligator Ron Bergeron, who got in trouble for molesting an alligator and then was investigated by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, but then wound up being a leader of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. So I think he's the only Florida politician who wound up being appointed to help to run the same agency that investigated him for wrestling an alligator. There's also a piece in there about Florida mermaids, that Florida has an entire mermaid industry. I don't know if you're familiar with Weeki Wachee Springs State Park. It has long featured mermaids as state employees. The state stepped in and bought the place in the mid 2000s. And so the mermaids all became state employees. We are the only state where mermaids are government employees, which has led to some interesting conversations about the use of tax dollars for buying waterproof lipstick and shell bras. And so that has sort of spun off this whole industry statewide of women and some men who pull on 60-pound prosthetic tails and swim around and wave at the tourists. And so I interviewed mermaids from Pensacola, Jacksonville area, down in Fort Lauderdale. And there's one particular, my favorite one, lady who swims and supervises the other mermaids at the Rec Bar in Fort Lauderdale. And she said, I'm 47 years old. Thank God water lifts. So there also in that same piece, there's a mention of a guy who calls himself the Mer Tailor. He actually makes the tails for the people who want to swim around and pretend to be mermaids. And he said he used to work as a merman at Weeki Wachee Springs, but he ended up quitting as a result of what he called mermaid politics, which is not a phrase you would ever hear in any other state. I think Florida's the only place. And then there's a section called Crime Does Not Pay Enough, where I talk about some of the criminals that I've written about over the years. One of my favorites is a con man named Joe Boujon, who his list of victims included a judge. He had stopped off in one place. He was on the run from the law, but he stopped long enough to get married. He asked the judge, how much do you charge? The judge did the marriage ceremony, and Joe wrote him out a check for the amount. What the judge didn't realize is that A, the bank account that the check was drawn on didn't exist, and B, the check really didn't exist either. Joe had just drawn it himself. And on top of all of that, Joe was not legally divorced from his first wife. So Joe was committing bigamy with that marriage as well. So sort of a multitasking for a con man. There's also a piece in there about twins who constantly got the court system confused. People, the one would get arrested and say, no, it wasn't me, it was the other guy. And then the second guy would get arrested. No, it wasn't me, it was my brother. Then the third section is called Wild Wildlife, where I tell about some of the wildlife stories. One that Lisa mentioned was where a particular, there was a legend of the leopard eel in the Florida Panhandle. People claim that there was this creature that swam around in the swamps up there. It was long and skinny and had spots on it and had little wings up by its head and little flippers. And these two scientists, one of them actually found one and stored it in a Tupperware container. And he and his partner wound up spending their own time and their own money to do all the things you have to do to scientifically identify this thing. And they wound up discovering that it's not an eel after all. It's a type of salamander called a siren. So they named it the Reticulated Siren. And the two little wings on its head are actually external gills for breathing underwater. After my piece ran about the two scientists and the Reticulated Siren, I got a very stiffly worded letter from a lawyer for the Tupperware company who was challenging my use of the word Tupperware in describing the container that they had used for storing this thing. He said, we want to make sure it was not some generic plastic container, but was in fact a definite Tupperware container. And I wrote back and said, I know Tupperware is based in Kissimmee. I know it's a Florida product. I would never, ever want to slur a Florida product. And so I will, I will guarantee for you that this was definitely Tupperware that they stored it in. And in fact, I think Tupperware is missing a bet. I think Tupperware needs to get these scientists to endorse their product and to say, if you find a mythical creature that turns out to be real, store it in Tupperware. It's the best way. For some reason, Tupperware has not taken me up on that suggestion. There's a piece in there about the fastest gopher tortoise in Florida. It was fast because someone had picked it up to take it home for dinner. And I mean, the driver's dinner, not for the tortoise. What he didn't realize is that it was part of a scientific experiment that had been going on for decades. And then there's a piece about the manatee that had been in captivity longer than any other. It had been in there for 69 years in Manatee County. It was the official mascot of Manatee County. Snooty was his name. So and he died by misadventure. And so there's a long obituary in there for Snooty. And then the last section is all about, it's called The State You're In. It's more general Florida stories, like why there's a section of Interstate 4 that's considered to be haunted. There's a piece in there about Gift of Love that was a spring. There's a major Florida businessman who kept promising his secretary he was going to marry her. And he actually gave her a spring as a pre-wedding gift, but then he backed out. He got cold feet. But she wound up with all of his holdings anyway, including this spring. I made sort of fun of some of Florida's interesting place names, like Yalaha, which I think sounds sort of like your naughty bits. It's a euphemism for your naughty bits. That chapter's called Don't We Wah Hitchka My Okahumpka. My favorite place name is probably Two Egg, because one of my ancestors supposedly named the place. Two Egg, which is known, by the way, as the birthplace of Faye Dunaway. Supposedly my ancestor ran the general store in town, and times were bad, so instead of money he would take things in trade, so like a couple of chickens for a dress or something like that. And supposedly he said, this town's so sorry it's not even worth 2 eggs, and that's where they got the name for Two Egg. There are several profiles in the book of other writers, because this whole book is sort of a tribute to Florida storytellers. So there's a piece in there about Johnny McDonald, who lived in Sarasota, and it slipped little environmental messages into his Travis McGee mysteries. There's a piece in there about Elmore Leonard, who we think of as living in Detroit, but he lived part-time down here in Florida as well. And his best books, I think, the ones that certainly made him a star, are books that were set in Florida, like Out of Sight, for instance, or Rum Punch, which became the basis for the movie Jackie Brown. There's a piece in there about Donald J. Sobel, who was a Miami resident and is probably the most popular author you've never heard of. He wrote all the Encyclopedia Brown mysteries for kids. And I always like to mention, there's a piece in there about Charles Willeford, the godfather of the South Florida wacky crime novel. He had a long career as a pulp fiction writer. And then in the early 80s, he wrote Miami Blues, which became a movie starring Alec Baldwin. And then he wrote several sequels to that. And one of the books, Sideswipe, came out, one of the sequels. And a customer really didn't like it and sent it back to the author with a note saying it's a crime to charge this much money for a book like this. And then to emphasize the point, he shot it 6 times. So the book arrived, it had 6 bullet holes in it. All of Willeford's friends were horrified. And they were like, you've got to call the cops. You got to report this to the FBI. And Charles was like, no, it's good to get feedback. So I'm hoping to get good feedback from this book, but not like that. Do you guys have any questions? That's kind of the sort of the tenor of the book. And I hope you'll all consider buying it. And feel free to ask me about it.
Thanks, Craig. That was an awesome update, and I've gotten quite a few notes directly that you're hilarious, and those are some great stories. So I do have a few questions that have come in directly.
Sure.
One is, in terms of being an author, I know you mentioned you worked for a few different papers. How have things changed over the last few years, not just with COVID, but I understand many of the newspapers have, they have syndicated writers, and so it's harder
Sure.
for, how can someone who wants to, pursue an authorship type of career or being an author, do you just have to do it part-time, or is there a real opportunity in this?
Every author I know does it part-time, and they have some full-time job. Maybe the one exception is our friend Tamara Lush, who writes romance novels under the name Tamara Lush, and then cozy mysteries under the name Tara Lush. So she's a full-time author, but she's she's basically doing the job of two people. But everybody else is either working as a professor or a writing teacher, or like me, they're doing a weekly column, something like that to pay the bills. But writing the books is a lot of fun. Tim Dorsey always likes to say when he was a reporter, people would hear he was coming and they go, "Oh, it's Ted Dorsey again." But then when he became an author, people were like, "Hey, it's Tim Dorsey, yay!" So you do get a different reception when you're a reporter as opposed to being an author. A lot of the papers have gone to working from home, and so you miss that newsroom culture that you used to have, where people would get together and have quirky discussions and long discursive lunches. And so that's sort of isolating, and I think that's to the detriment of newspapering. But on the other hand, you got to be safe. So we'll see if they come back to the newsroom. I mean, I was laid off by the Times in March of last year, so I miss being able to go over to an editor and immediately say, "Hey, I've got a story," and then see it in the paper the next day. On the other hand, my number of mandatory staff meetings has dropped to 0, which is that's worth an awful lot, believe me.
But we all love mandatory stuff.
Yeah.
All right, and
You
then
can go to mine.
One last question, Craig. How can we get your book? What's the best way to find your book? Is it Amazon?
Well, Books and Books has copies of everything. So I would encourage you to buy from an independent bookstore like Books and Books. Yes, you can get it from Amazon. You can also go on IndieBound, which will tell you the closest independent bookstore to you where you can order it as well. And in addition to the state you're in, last year I had a book come out called Cattail, which is the wild, weird battle to save the Florida panther, and that's now out in paperback. So there are a couple of them you may want to look for.
Great, thanks, Craig. And I have to say not the most valuable, but I think one of the most interesting pieces of information that you shared was that the author of Encyclopedia Brown is from Miami. Is that what I heard?
Yes, Donald J. Sobel.
I read every single one of those books from number 1 on. And unfortunately, I couldn't get my son into it. But
that's too bad, because one of my joys, and I tell this in the book, is I read the books as a kid, but then reading them to my kids as a bedtime book was it was a wonderful experience going through it all again. And I caught stuff that I hadn't caught the first time around.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Craig. Definitely share your contact information in the chat, and maybe a link or any other info you want to share. And we look forward to seeing you at the book fair. And I know we're going to give away a book that you have donated, so we appreciate that. But before we get to that, I do have a question two questions for Lisa. One is the book fair free? How much is the book fair? And are they doing field trips this year?
Okay, so the field trips that the person is inquiring about is a field trip that the book fair hosts on Friday, where for 36 years we had 10,000 kids on site at the fair. So we decided not to do that because we didn't want to bring so many kids in proximity of each other. We hope to have the field trip back next year. The programming that would normally have happened on Friday has been recorded. It's available virtually and will be distributed throughout the school system. So we have that, and then we have other author conversations that are available on miamibookfaironline.com. So none of the children's authors are in town. Everything was recorded in advance. And tickets to the fair, they're for the evenings with tickets, which the evenings with are conversations that take place the week of the fair, which is November 11th, the 14th to the 21st. And the week of the fair, the 14th to the 19th, there are evening presentations by several authors. So some are free, some are ticketed, some are bundled with a book. The street fair itself is $10. So everything in the fair, once you're in, is free. Tickets for seniors 62 and above and teens between 13 and 18, tickets are $5. And then tickets are free for those 12 and under. And there will be programming at the Children's Alley. There's drop-in, and then they're scheduled. And again, I just encourage you all to visit miamibookfair.com. The schedule will be live tomorrow, and will and just to remind everybody that everything will be RSVP and ticketed. And that's a numbers thing. We're keeping track of how many people are in each room. So each room will have a certain number of people inside. And again, each room will be cleaned between author presentations.
That's awesome, Lisa, and it makes sense. Even at the museums, I know we're seeing a lot of ticketing in advance, even if it's just a general admission event. So I think it makes everyone feel safer that they're not going to be surrounded by a million people. Here's a question from Mr. Copeland on our tourism team. Craig, have you ever worked for GMO or Visit Florida to promote tourism?
I have not, but I would be happy to do it because Florida is absolutely my favorite state. You know, because we got world-class beaches. We've got a state park system that's won national awards 4 times. And of course, we have the world's nuttiest police log items. You know, I always say, if you want to live somewhere boring, where the news is the same day after day, move to Nebraska, move to one of the square states. But if you want to live in a place where every day you open the paper or you turn on the news and go, wow, a guy punched a swan today, then you're in the right place.
That's great. And then Adrian, your question about virtual, are you thinking the book fair, Adrian? Adrian, did you want to ask your question about the virtual question that you had?
Yes, I wanted to know is how is the virtual working?
So the virtual works. So all of the presentations, whether they're live streamed or recorded in advance, will be available at miamibookfaironline.com. And like Netflix, each day different presentations will be dropped and will be made available. And all of the programming available on miamibookfaironline.com is free.
Thank you.
All great questions. And then a quick question for you, Herlinda. I think this is from me, and just to share with our partners. In terms of the Art of Black programming that I know is right around the corner, can you share any updates on how people can list events? Or I think I saw a notice go out about us looking for people to submit their happenings. Can you share any updates on how people can participate in those opportunities?
Sure. Yes, people can submit on artofblackmiami.com. There's a link on there for labeled submission form, and that deadline is October 20th. I believe that is for our print guide. Petra, is that correct? Petra, I believe she's on.
Yes. Thanks, Herlinda. That is correct. Yes.
Perfect.
So we're encouraging folks to submit their events, exhibition through that website, and we can get it on the calendar as well as in our print copy.
Great. And again, if you haven't firmed up any of your plans or activations, they can always be added to the website. But for the print guide, it's what is that Monday? Is that pretty much Monday?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Okay, yeah. Don't get ahead of myself. All right, so we'll get to the trivia in just a moment. Thanks again to our great presenters and to, of course, my colleagues for sharing updates with us today. Before I pass it on to the trivia questions, I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have our annual meeting coming up on October 28th. So that's going to be up at the Turnberry Aventura area. So Turnberry Isle, I guess I should say it right, JW Marriott Turnberry Resort and Spa, October 28th from 11 to 2. Tickets are on sale now. They include parking, and it's a great opportunity to get out and network with over 400 industry professionals, as well as welcome our new incoming CEO, Mr. David Whitaker, and bid farewell to our outgoing CEO, Mr. William Talbert III. So we are looking forward to a really fun, festive, interesting, and informative event. We'll also be unveiling our marketing plan, our year in review, and some of our other key publications will be shared in that event. So if you're wondering about trade shows and sales missions, all of that is being collated and cooked up into a beautiful book that will be presented and available both online and in person at that event. So hope you can join us. And with that, I'm just going to remind everyone, since annual meeting is coming up next in just 2 weeks, basically, we will not do a virtual networker next week. We're going to do a new partner orientation. So if you are a new partner, you should have received an invite to that. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing everyone on October 28th for the annual meeting. And let's go ahead and do some trivia. So, Linda, I know you said you had a question for us, correct? You have a trivia question. So this is going to be for 2 tickets to the annual meeting. That's $110 value. And we're going to ask you to put your answer in the chat. So be sure to reply all when you put your answer. And of course, if you're a GMCVB staffer, don't respond because you're already working at the event. So, Herlinda, what is the question for 2?
What is the theme of the Hispanic Heritage event happening in Little Havana this Friday night?
The links are right there. You could click on it.
Nothing? Is no one listening? No, just kidding. I have a backup question just in case.
We might want to go with the backup question.
Okay. Of the events I mentioned, which city is hosting the Conga Loca Hispanic Music Festival?
Which part of town?
Yes.
Gustavo? Is it Opalaca or Miami Springs?
Opalaca.
All right, Gustavo, looks like a new partner. Gustavo,
Good
we will
job.
contact you. We'll contact you, Gustavo, for your 2 tickets. So don't worry, we'll reach out to you after the event. Congratulations, and thank you, Herlinda, for a second question.
You're welcome.
Okay, and now we're going to pass it over to either Craig or Lisa for the next question. And this is for a copy of the book, the new book that you've come out with. Craig, what's your question?
My question is, where is the Tupperware company based in Florida?
Oh, good one.
Where is the Tupperware company based? Kissimmee?
That's right.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so Ali will collect his information.
Yes, definitely. And we'll get that out in the mail to you,
Yep.
Steve. Yeah, we have your info, so we'll definitely share it. And unless we have any other questions or messages to share, we'll let everyone move on with their day, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 28th. Last call for questions. All right, thanks again, Craig, Lisa, Herlinda,
My pleasure.
and of course, Syria, who does a great job with our evites and organizing us. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
It's great.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again. I
Bye,
appreciate it.
thanks.
See you soon. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.